I didn't lose my leg because of a shark, a car accident, or because I was clipping my toenails but missed. I lost my leg because of a surgery gone wrong. But the doctor isn't the only one who made mistakes. Recently, I made a video about a gut feeling I had leading up to that ill-fated surgery. I felt a sense of dread but dismissed it as nerves. If I'd listened, I would still have my leg. That's a pretty big mistake. So how can we forgive ourselves after making devastating, irreversible mistakes? It's hard. I feel like we tend to go one of two ways. Either we are way too hard on ourselves, or we try to offload all the blame onto someone else. And I'm not saying that there aren't other people who made mistakes, but often we could have also done things better, or at least that's the case in what happened to me. I didn't mess up the surgery that crippled my leg, but I could have gotten multiple opinions before consenting to surgery, or I could have walked out when my intuition was telling me to leave. When we hurt someone, it's like we simply can't forgive ourselves. Because somehow that would be minimizing what happened. I don't know how to put it into words, so please forgive me if I do a bad job. But it's almost like when we hurt someone, whether it's ourselves or someone else, we feel morally obligated to feel awful. Otherwise, somehow it implies that we don't care and are therefore horrible human beings. I hope I said that all right. It really is a hard phenomenon to put into words, but I've seen it in myself and in others. It's like we subconsciously feel morally obligated not to forgive ourselves. Does that make sense? Not really, because it's a lie. There's nothing right, nothing good about condemning ourselves and refusing to forgive. It traps us in a dark place, locked away from the possibility of moving forward. Even if we have harmed someone, isn't it better to move on and become a better person who's less likely to make that kind of mistake again? What does it accomplish to stay in the shadows? Absolutely nothing. In fact, I'd argue that forgiving ourselves helps us do more good for those around us. I've met remarkably few people who seem to get this right, myself included. Like I said, either people seem to accept zero blame or they overblow their role in what went wrong. I know I'm really good at beating myself up when I make a mistake. No one can make me feel worse than I can make myself feel. Negative thoughts love to run wild, so how do we rein them in? I'm not an expert, but I figured out what works for me. I'm a writer at heart, so when I'm struggling, it helps me to sit down and start typing. Sometimes it's cathartic just to express my emotions. Other times I need to be brutally honest and list off the facts. Seeing them in black and white helps me to separate emotions from facts, which in turn helps me accept responsibility for the things I could have done better, while also putting everything into context. The fact is, my perspective now is different from my past selves. I didn't have all the facts. I didn't have the knowledge that I've gleaned from hard experience. In some situations, it simply isn't possible to have avoided catastrophe. I had absolutely no way of knowing that going to a podiatrist for arch supports would lead to the loss of not only my leg, but also financial and emotional hardship for my whole family. The lives of my husband, my children, and those closest to me have been irrevocably changed. Because of my choices, I started down a path that led to amputation. Because I lost my leg, I spent years in a wheelchair. Because of that wheelchair, we had to sell our dream home in a neighborhood that we adored. Never thought I'd lose our home because I went in for arch supports.
Nope.
In order to buy an older, more expensive house with a much higher interest rate, just so we'd have something more wheelchair accessible. When I pull out this driveway, I'm leaving my home never to return. No, it's not as bad as the way so many other people around the world have lost their homes, but it still hurts. Our housing costs are about triple what they used to be, not to mention the addition of many medical bills. My children miss their friends and neighborhood. They've struggled with anxiety, grief, and loss, not just because they lost their home, but because they feel like they lost their mom.
And I feel like
I lost my mom and dad. She died.
The mother they used to have doesn't exist anymore. And the woman that's been left in her place is disabled, struggles with chronic pain, and is often gone for doctor's appointments. My husband misses how things were before, and we're both stressed out trying to deal with the consequences of losing my leg. Financially, emotionally, and physically, our lives have been turned upside down, and the loss we've sustained is permanent. We'll try to make the best of it, but we can never erase it. And it all started with my choices. I know the situation isn't exactly my fault, but it's definitely because of me. I feel like I single-handedly decimated our lives. That's a hard realization to live with, especially when my daughter is crying because she misses her mommy and my kids miss their home. I'm not the only one who suffered because of what happened to me. But even if there had been some way for me to know or guess where my choices would lead, the fact remains that I'm not the person now that I was then. Thinking of my past self as a different person makes it a lot easier to forgive myself. I consider what I would say if my past self really was a different person. Would I verbally berate that other person, constantly reminding her of the worst mistakes of her life, telling her that she ruined the lives of her family and that she's a horrible human being and it's all her fault that things turned out so badly? Of course not. I sometimes need to force myself to think what I would say to my past self if it wasn't me. After I've done that repeatedly, then I can take a deep breath, look myself in the mirror, and say it to myself. It's hard. If I need to, I'll even picture myself as a child because it's much harder for me to be angry at a little kid than an adult. I mean, even if my son did something wrong, something with serious consequences, I would still forgive him. I would take him in my arms and tell him that I love him. As an adult, my childhood self feels like a different person. While still being me, that little girl is still there, deep down inside me. I remember the hard things she went through. I remember how bad she felt every time she messed up and how desperately she wanted to do things right. And I began to feel compassion. That's what I've been missing. Compassion is the vital ingredient to forgiveness. We all make mistakes, or do flat out bad things that weren't accidents. Some are big, some are little. Some consequences can be corrected, others are permanent. But no one who truly loves you would want you to stay trapped in a vicious cycle of self-blame and self-loathing. I repeat, no one who truly cares for you, not your friends, family, or God, wants you to stay trapped in such a dark place. If you regret what happened, then you have a seed inside of you that can grow into something better. People who truly love you want you to let go of the pain, learn from it, and move on. They want you to become the incredible person they see in you. This Christmas season, I challenge you to give a gift to someone you love or to yourself by forgiving. If you're haunted by a bad experience you've never let go of, I'm inviting you to do so now. If it wasn't your fault, then please accept that it wasn't. You didn't mean to, and you didn't know. It isn't your fault. Letting go of the pain doesn't mean you don't care. It simply means you're not going to keep adding more hurt to what's already taken place. And if you are to blame, my heart goes out to you. It breaks my heart to think of how much you must be hurting. It's so much harder to let go of pain when we feel we deserve it. You're right, you can't erase what happened. You can't take away the consequences to yourself or others. But you can change. Learning and moving forward makes the world a better place. That holds immeasurable value, especially if you've hurt someone. If we can't take away the bad thing we did, then all that's left is to do good. You can still make the world a better place for your being in it. I promise you that if you really try, your heart will change. Light will come into your life. As you accept it and let it grow, that light will permeate to what you say and do. You don't have to be chained down by the person you were or the mistakes you've made. It isn't too late to become the person you long to be. I'm Stefanita, and a lot of what we've discussed today also applies to forgiving others. Speaking of which, here's one of my favorite videos about how I forgave the doctor who crippled my leg. And whatever you're going through, hang in there. Whoever you are, wherever you've been, I'm rooting for you.